Good morning. This is Bill from Out of Europa, Naples, on an unusually lovely Florida Thursday. I say unusually because most of what's causing it to be nice is this big fire we have out in the Everglades, which obviously that's not going to make people living out in the Everglades very chipper, but for the rest of us it's causing this very nice sort of overcast look. There's a lovely smell of burning wood in the air that just is very pleasing, and everyone, you know, who's not in the direct line of fire is probably quite chipper. To the people who are in the line of fire, my apologies for enjoying this. I can't help it. I wish I could sympathize more, but at my age and, you know, given my conditions in life, I just frankly don't really give a crap about anything, which is a damn shame. It's a damn shame. You know, part of that, of course, is the ongoing whiskey therapy, which I have not given up yet because there's still talk of the coronavirus going around. Everybody's still miserable about it. At least a lot of people are. You know, I went in a grocery store yesterday to get lunch. They have a very nice little hot lunch section. And I was accosted by a woman for not wearing a mask. She just, you could tell she was very deeply troubled, made all sorts of harumphing gestures, and it was a little bit freakish. I was on the phone with a lawyer at the time because I'm getting ready to sue my insurance company again. But anyway, this is all very disinteresting. It's just a shame. It's a shame, the whole mask thing, the whole coronavirus thing, that we're attacking a virus by living in fear and with politics. It just doesn't seem like the right way to go after a virus. You can't really hide from these things. You know, they're going to come for you. It turns out they're a virus. So I just don't think that the amount of fear that people live in is healthy for the country at large, and I hope it's going to fade away as time goes on. I really do. I hope I can buy toilet paper again too before it's too late. Anyway, I won't ramble on about that. It's just not the thing to do, but I will get into this car. This is a 2000 and what the hell year is this car anyway? It's an 04. This is an 04 Cadillac XLR. One of my all-time favorite cars, I might add, for a variety of reasons. Obviously, I've always been I'm sorry for the wind noise. I can tell it's probably going to be crappy in this thing. We've got a little bit of a breeze, and we also have some birds up there that have started to gather. Hopefully the wind throws them off. If they do their dive bomb attack, they're going to be off to the left a little bit, and I'll be able to thwart them. But anyway, the Cadillac XLR has always been one of my favorites since it came out for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's a Cadillac, and I've always liked the Cadillac brand. You could even maybe call me a bit of a Cadillac guy, even though, you know, I'm here at Out of Europa. But Cadillac is just a fascinating mark and has historically been one of the most high-end American car companies, and it's lived up to that until we get to a certain point in time. But if you go back, it was named for a guy named Antoine Cadillac, who, as we determined in another Cadillac video a while back, was a bit of a fraud. You know, he pretended to be more of an elite sort of noble-born guy than he was, and using that trickery, he did manage to eke his way into more power than he otherwise should have been allowed to get, or at least certainly would have been able to get, and is credited to be as the guy who founded Detroit. So it's a, you know, pretty big shtick for a guy. He also ended up down in Louisiana and New Orleans. He had a lot to do with getting that place off the ground. So pretty interesting historical figure. And the Cadillac badge is based off his phony family crest, which somebody in one of the videos in the past, I mentioned I was a little bit troubled that it had ducks in the crest, and I was corrected that these weren't ducks. They were maybe pheasants or some other more fine bird, but of course, you know, no avian thing is going to make me very chipper, and to me, whether it's a duck or a pheasant really makes very little difference. So in my mind, it's a duck in the wreaths and crests on a Cadillac, and I'm just going to stick with that. Which again, you know, makes it sort of interesting to see this 300-year-old family crest has become the badge on a Cadillac. But anyway, we'll get into this. So Cadillac was a great company, many, many years, building the standard of the world, as they called it. They were historically just fantastic. Then you get into the 70s and the oil embargo and all the gasoline crunch stuff, and that kind of put a hurting on Cadillac because they were building big and luxurious luxo barges that got crappy gas mileage, and people kind of eked away from them unless they were running a casino out in Las Vegas or, you know, driving around retired in Florida. So they became kind of known as an old person's car. Get into the 1980s, and a guy named, what was it, Roger Stone? No, Roger something, Smith. He was the head of GM, and he ushered in a very infamous era for Cadillac. All the different brands of GM, he tried to make into one corporate thing. Jesus, somebody's going nuts out there. I need to get Midasized. But anyway, so what you had was, you remember the Cimarron, where they took a Cavalier and they made it into a Cadillac. You remember those little front-wheel drive Cadillac sedan DeVilles and stuff, where it all shared a platform with Buick and Oldsmobile. And the whole purpose of Cadillac, their whole design theme, became trying to make a car that was a Cadillac out of a foundation that wasn't a Cadillac. And that went on for years and years and years. And it was frankly a terrible shame. Enter this car, enter the art and science approach of the late 1990s and early 2000s, and Cadillac decided that they were going to change. With GM's blessing, of course, there was a huge investment in the company, and they became something more akin to the standard of the world that they used to be. They started building cars that young people might lust after. In fact, we have one over here. Let's get into some of the culmination of that effort. Yeah, we got an absolute mess back here. I'm not even going to get into it, but just very quickly. So there's our German Bentley. That'll be coming up soon. But there's a CTSV Coupe. And, you know, as I said, as much as I love this car, it's kind of a Cadillac for people who don't like Cadillacs. When I think about being a kid and knowing the guys who drove them, I don't think there were any Cadillac aficionados who said, give me a 556 horsepower manual gearbox coupe that's been tested for performance around the Nürburgring. But sure enough, that's what Cadillac started building, and I love them for it. This way, you remember Cadillac had the Allante, which was one of my favorite cars, and you could say it was a spiritual precursor to this XLR. It came out in the 1980s, huge expense, horribly misguided process that just failed miserably. As much as I might like Allantes, unquestionably they did fail. They were as much money as this car when it was new, and you know, period inflation corrected dollars, huge money, over 100,000 actually, so more than this car. They were flown off to Italy to be finished. It was just a terrible, terrible idea. And the XLR is what the Allante could have been if people had been a little more intelligent. And they used this art and science approach, which frankly I find silly. I mean, art and science, it just sounds like something you get in a elementary school. You know, they're handing you those scissors that won't cut you and sending you off to look up Wikipedia articles. But, you know, that's those overpaid goofball designers who live in a dream world and come up with crap that the rest of us just roll our eyes at. If you remember Chris Bangle and the flame surfacing BMWs, that was the same kind of thing, but with much less success that Cadillac had with art and science. But I guess by art and science, what they meant is they weren't going to have any curves on the car, that they were going to be entirely angular, throw out the protractors and make it all very sharp creases, which they did. And this car was designed to look a bit like the Stealth Fighter. That was very much the inspiration for it. In fact, the Evoque concept car in the late 90s was very much like this car, very close, and was said to be designed entirely on the look of the Stealth Fighter. And it really works. I mean, here's this American car company that's been building rounded off, floaty Luxo barges. All of a sudden, it's got this sort of performance roadster with incredibly sharp angles, a very low sloping front end, a very high stubby tail, 2 seats, big V8 under the hood, rear drive, thank you Cadillac, and lots of performance to boot. And even if you couldn't say it was a huge success, it was certainly more of a success than the Allante, and served Cadillac as a halo car for their art and science approach. People who loved the XLR but couldn't afford it might go buy a CTSV, a younger crowd, or a CTS, and that was the purpose of this car. Very often we talk about stuff that's going to become collectible as time goes on. I have no doubt that this will be one of those cars. V8 powered, folding hardtop, 2 seats, limited production. They only built about 15,000 of these things overall, and of course a very interesting historical nameplate like Cadillac. The neat thing about it is it was based on the Corvette platform, the C6 platform, which is of course what makes it an incredibly wonderful car. You know, there's so much engineering goes into the Corvette to make it perform on par with anything from Europe, and Cadillac got to borrow that for this thing, even if they didn't use, in my mind, the correct engine. They used a North Star instead of the LS. It still does have that leaf spring, you know, transverse thing in the back. It's got front coil springs and wishbones, very lightweight, very well balanced, 50-50 weight distribution with a transaxle in the back, and that is what the Allante was always lacking. If they'd put, you know, the Allante on some 1980s version of this platform with rear drive, it would have been a much more successful car. Anyway, let's get into this thing. So it's got a folding hardtop, and because it does, oh, that's wonderful. Alright, so I'm having very poor luck there. I guess you just can't nurse it. You have to press it and walk back. Because it has a folding hardtop, you do get this power trunk release, which is quite enormous. And this is what your cargo is limited to when the top is down. The good news is you can definitely fit a toddler in there, a couple babies, whatever kids you need to bring with you. That's why this does make an okay family car. Obviously, when they get to be 6, 7 years old, it's going to be tougher to stick them in. Although if you can forego putting the top down, you could just flip that guy forward, and then you've got a lot more space for your young kids. Although they don't give you any sort of tie downs. I don't see anything in there to use a ratchet strap to get a kid in place, so hopefully they don't get too crazy back there. But anyway, so with the top up, you do get a tremendous amount of luggage space. You're not going to have any issues with that. And you know, the only thing is, of course, you lose your top. You do get to fit a set of golf clubs, one maybe, in this little strip across here. Might have to put the driver inside, but otherwise does suit the needs, you know, pretty well. And again, if you want a practical car, go buy an Accord. This isn't the point of the XLR. This is a halo car. This is a 2-seat roadster meant to compete with the Mercedes-Benz SL500, the Jaguar XK, even the Porsche 911 to some extent. And I think it acquits itself very well against those cars. Trunk space, probably not, you know, great in terms of the comparison, but yeah, it could be worse. Close it, press this guy here, and down it comes. I also like the way that third brake light is sort of a pseudo spoiler. I love the little quad pipes at the bottom. Very, very cool stuff. It also gives you that Corvette pinch style door opening, which, love it or hate it, it's what you're stuck with. Let's have a look under the hood. Okay, so here it is, a North Star that finally was positioned north-south for rear drive, and also revamped for this XLR. They upped the compression ratio, they added infinite VVT, variable valve timing technology, they changed the block so the accessories could be bolted directly to it, LS style, and bumped up the horsepower by about 20. So 320 horsepower in this car is pretty damn good. And compared to the same year Mercedes and Jaguar, it you know, was quite reasonably competitive. In fact, had more horsepower in 04 than either of those two cars, probably more than the 911 as well. So definitely a peppy motor under here. That goes to a GM, what are they called, L550E automatic transmission, which is basically a transax, unlike in the Corvette. That means the transmission is between the rear tires, and that gives the car a very nice 50-50 weight distribution. You know, they do use this big, cheapish plastic cover with the 32 valve North Star thing on it. It's fine. You know, it looks pretty enough under there. Very simple, very elegant, and good enough. And of course, with 4 cams, 32 valves, and 320 horsepower, even if I don't love it as much as the LS engine that they could have used, I do think it's a pretty damn good engine, and was very good for what the Cadillac buyers in his, you know, the 50s, a guy in his 60s, 50s, he wanted a Cadillac engine. If he wanted a Corvette engine, he'd go buy a Corvette. If you're buying a Cadillac, you might want a difference, and I think that's part of why GM put this engine in this car. Lovely, long, sleek hood. So we got everyone showing up at once. There's the detailer who's detailing on this car sucked. Here's a friend of Richard Collins here to do some, you know, work. Richard, he has this giant, beautiful, incredible shop, and instead he just sends people over here to do work because he's hateful. Anyway, maybe he knows I'll watch him where nobody's watching him at home. If you look again at the sides of the car, absolutely incredible. You know, I think the slab, they used a composite material. You could call it plastic. It was supposed to be aluminum, like in the Evoque show car, but that just proved to be too difficult to put together on a big scale. But it is a thicker composite than they use at the Corvette. They also used a different painting process where everything was painted sort of horizontally, which gave it a much better finish. And it does manage to feel much more tight together and proper than it does in the Corvette. They also use these big, what size wheels are these things? What do they got, 20s on here? No, they're only 18s, but they look bigger. They get these big manholes behind them, manhole covers, very big discs. Just a good-looking wheel and tire combo on this car. And even at 18s, they somehow do manage to look a bit bigger. Also like the big square mirrors on it, the rectangular stuff, all the creases. Let's fire it up and get the top down. Here we've got these keys that were designed by Bulgari, like the instrument cluster. It's a proximity system, so it'll unlock the car and start the car while these things are just in your pocket. Let's fire it up. Okay, beautiful big rumble when you crank it to life. Absolutely lovely. That goes away quickly, but befitting again of a halo car with a big V8 in it. To run the top, there's this guy right here. We're going to press that down. See the windows go down. This top was designed by a company called Car Top Systems. It's a German company, sort of connected Porsche and Mercedes to build folding hardtops for vehicles. And, you know, they did a really, really nice job of doing that. So, let's see, about 30 seconds to run this thing, more so than an SL. But still fast enough to not be terrible. So it folds neatly into the trunk. Out comes that little panel. Down goes that little panel. And then down comes the big folding trunk. And despite being what I think looks very complex and heavy and weird, these things have been way more reliable than the folding hardtops on the SLs. See if I can open it with the motor running. Can. Okay, so there you go. There's the cargo that you get when the top is down. And I don't think it's that terrible. You know, people complained about it, but yeah, what do you expect? You can't have your cake and eat it too. But there you go. A little bit of places to put crap. Put that back down. Inside, they managed to make this car a lot more luxurious than the Corvette chassis that it was based on. You know, gone are all the plastics. They're now replaced with sort of a soft touch leather and vinyl approach. You've got the sort of attractive real eucalyptus wood everywhere. You get heated and ventilated seats. They go back to the 90s to put speakers in the headrests or close to them. That's something that hasn't happened for a long time until this car came out. And they made pretty comfortable place to be. I like the way the dash wraps around into the door panels. I think that looks pretty. What do you mean no fobs detected? For the love of God. Let's put them here in this cheapo cup holder. I like the side vents being part of the door panels. Again, I do like the chunky side view mirrors. I think they're cool. One complaint I have is you have the steering wheel where it really doesn't know if it wants to be wood or wants to be leather. Right at the 10 or 2, there's a transition from wood to leather that, you know, may be where I sort of like to grip the wheel. Sometimes I'm even a 9 and 1 guy, but I don't know. I think they could have used either kind of good insects flying around in here, making me crazy. Anyway, I think they could have changed that wheel design a little bit to make it more amenable. You do have a power column, lovely stuff. I suppose before we get into the interior too much, let me show you this thing with the top down. This is one of those rare cars that looks as good to me top up or top down. When the top is up, you've got that incredibly beautiful angled rear end on it, which is unusual for a convertible and looks terrific. And of course, when the top's down, basically anything looks good with the top down. And this XLR is no exception. I like the little roll bar hoops behind the seats. Anyway, that's it with the top down. So there's your instrument cluster designed by Bulgari, Swiss watchmaker. Very nice, you know, 160 mile an hour speedo, 7,000 RPM tach, red line at 65. You got your oil pressure, you've got your water temp, you got your volts, you got your fuel. Only 49,000 miles on this thing, which is great. You know, traditionally you've got your stock. I'm sure this is the same one on a Corvette or a CTS. Does your headlights here. This one does your wipers. You've got a heads-up display where you can angle it up, down, change the intensity of it so you can see it fine, and you know, that works nice, and it gives you any kind of information you might need to know. If your check engine light comes on as you're driving along, it's going to come up, or if there's a shop where you need to buy some gold chains and a open collared shirt with a hairy chest to expose it, you know, you can probably find that too. Gas stations, golf courses, it'll work in conjunction with the nav and whatever else. You've got your controls here, lock and unlock. This is nice, this is fine, ergonomic, mirrors, windows, lovely. Does not use a traditional pull handle for the door, gives you a button to press. As scary as that is, there is a manual override down here, so if you get stuck in the damn thing, you just pull the manual override and you'll be fine. Over here you've got information stuff, so we can go through and you can turn on the wipers like a nitwit. You can change English, metric, oil life, tire pressure monitors. It has elapsed time, trip stuff, average speed. Range is low because, yeah, obviously I'm the only guy who puts gas in these things. Odometer, you know, all very nice stuff. We do have a new screen on the way for this thing. It's got a fudged up screen, but I'm running out of cars to do that are ready, so I thought, what the hell, I'm just going to do this car before it comes up. But anyway, you get a nice little in-dash. They're not overwhelming you with buttons and tech the way that they did in the SLs and such. It's a lot more Jaguar-esque in terms of just being elegant and easy. But you know, it's touch screen, gives you your navigation. I've agreed, but it's not doing anything. But anyway, there's your map. Hard to see. We'll have the screen in a couple days. It gives you satellite radio, AM, FM, all pretty good for 2004. So all but the most dedicated snowflake can probably entertain himself well enough in here. Also an in-dash changer. I'm not a huge fan of the climate controls being angled towards your hips instead of up. I don't think they're that intuitive and nice to reach ergonomically, but they're fine. If you have dual side, this has heating and cooling in one button. So there's cool, high, and low. there's heat high-low. So you do have some nice ball breezers there to keep your nether regions in good shape. This is cheap. This is right out of a Corvette. I mean, they put a little bit of wood on it, but they're not fooling anyone. This is just cheap old GM crap. But the good news is, if you compare it to a Mercedes with its overcomplicated, ridiculous cup holder, at least this will probably stay working. So that counts for something. A little wooden leather shift knob. If you go over here to the left, you could now bang your way through the gears manumatically. You've got, there's a tire pressure reset. Got a nice little spot in here for a probably small to medium size 9mm will fit in there lovely. You've got another compartment back here if you need a little more firepower. Out it comes, even 2 tiers, so you can be able to, it's not huge in there, but you still be able to get a couple more guns in that. And of course, there's your rear beeper visuals. There's that fly, little bastard, get out of here. You got a set of books over here. Also turn your airbag on and off if, God forbid, you've procreated and have children you need to carry around. You got an XLR on the soft material dashboard, little badge there. Yeah, it's just all very nice. Here you've got a self-dimming mirror with OnStar, lovely. You've got your HomeLink garage door openers. Just enough, just what you need to be considered luxurious. Okay, to run the top up, now we're just going to press that button and do it in reverse. So up comes the trunk, that little panel folds back, and up will come this folding aluminum car top systems Mercedes and Porsche designed hardtop. And despite that lineage, it still does manage to work pretty damn well. And down goes the hatch. Rear visibility is not great. You know, you really can't see a ton out the back, but can you in an SL? You get in the same year SL 500, you're pretty damn buried too. Get the windows up, and now we're nicely ensconced in our folding hardtop convertible. All right, I'm gonna go for a spin. So the bathroom yesterday, Jason the mechanic went in the main one in our sales office and exploded it. I mean, it became a health hazard like the Black Hole of Calcutta. Absolutely horrifying. So I had to go into Marty's office and I used the bathroom he had in there. And oh my God, I had no idea. I mean, this is a guy who was in the military, and I always thought that they trained those guys. You know, you could bounce a quarter off the sheets, you know, everything neat as a pin. I mean, it was disgusting. I have been in roadside gas station bathrooms that I would much rather. I've been in portalets that felt more sanitized, and I don't know. Jesus, what the hell is, sorry, there's the Lord's name in vain thing. I don't mean to do that. I've been working on it. Like the tranny thing. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, Marty, just a disgusting, revolting human being. I mean, that guy has got, you know, he was a frat boy years, and he's never really altered from that. He still has that in him. And I mean, I think you Guns N' Roses in their height, in the middle of the tour, probably had more desire to be neat than Marty's got. Jesus. Oh, God. Oh, boy. Back to the XLR. Okay, so you're low slung, you're sitting very low, Corvette style. Of course, this frame is a little bit longer, a little bit taller, and a little bit narrower than the Corvette. So getting into it and out of it is not that bad, even for an old guy. But once you're sitting in it, yeah, you do feel a little bit Corvette-ish. You've got this big expanse of angled wood in front of you. Very, very nice. You know, the seats, they're supportive. Not as sporty as you might want, but I guess sporty enough. Yeah, I can appreciate that outfit, but I think she has a little bit more exercise to do before she wears it. Oh, listen to that growl. So that 4-cam North Star does give you some lovely V8 sounds. Have to say that. That was about quarter throttle, maybe a little bit more, and got a very peppy leave from that. Really good torque out of that. And of course the VVT gives you all the torque way down low. Listen to that. Yes. That just has a very, very nice growl to it, and very lovely for a Cadillac. This ain't your dad's sedan DeVille. The steering, it uses the Corvette's MagnaSteer system, which is great, very responsive, but it's been tuned to be a little bit more soft for the Cadillac. But it does give you a surprising amount of steering effort, more to the sporty side than you would expect. The suspension is fantastic. It uses that magneto hydrodynamic drive for an almost silent propulsion system that I doubt our SOSUS warning nets would. Oh God, that's the Redux. No, magneto rheological system made by Delphi, which uses a magnetic fluid in all of the shocks, which can be adjusted like 1,000 times a second or something for stiffness individually. And it's such a good system that companies like Ferrari have borrowed it from Delphi for use in their cars. I didn't hammer it. I'm sick. Oh yeah. Oh, very nice pull. There's a nice good test of those brakes. But anyway, so that magneto magnetic ride control works very, very well. Also used and updated at the time StabiliTrak traction control system that you can't disable. So it takes away some of your joy if you're going to go try to do donuts or burnouts in the Walmart parking lot. But is a very good traction control system that's going to help you do what you need to do. I would say this, all in all, this is not a sports car, nor is it meant to be a sports car. It's not meant to be the Cadillac version of the Corvette. I would compare it more than anything to the Jaguar XK of the same time, which is a GT car that happens to have 2 seats instead of 4. This is a terrific grand touring automobile. It's got the sports settings and levels that you need if you want to do some fun driving, but it's hardly the focus of the car. It's got to be comfortable as well, which Cadillac pulled off. It's got to be luxurious, which they pulled off. The seats, you know, they're not sporty supportive, but they're supportive enough while still being comfy. You know, you could compare it to, okay, so the 911 beats the shit out of it around a racetrack. Well, of course it does, but the 911 is it's a sports car parading as a Grand Tour. I mean, it's a true sports car. So is the Corvette. The Jag and the Cadillac, they kind of have a place of their own. The Lexus, it competed with the SC430, but that was dull. I mean, it was a fantastic car in its own way, but there's really no feeling. And Cadillac, when they built this thing, said, we don't want Lexus quiet. We want some driver excitement and involvement without getting to Corvette levels. So I think they did pull off a beautiful in-between, you know, between the Lexus's sort of lack of everything performance-related and the Porsche's, you know, Porsche Corvette's focus on performance. This is a nice in-between that gives you the performance you need and still gives you plenty of luxury. I think they hit it out of the park with this car. I absolutely love it. Of course, I like the Allante, too. Got no roosters out there, thank God. So anyway, there it is. This is an 04. I think they made these 04 to 09. They're all pretty much like each other. They went to a 6-speed later, but who cares? And I think it's just a fantastic car, a really neat moment in history, and a pretty damn cool car from Cadillac. This one I borrowed off the lot, so if you want to have a look at it online, it's AE. You know, there's always this parade of ass heading towards Porsche of Naples. All these pretty young girls heading over there to work. It's almost like attractive women seek out money or something. It's just weird. Anyway, yeah, aenaples.com if you want to check it out. Otherwise, you know, we'll come up with something fun to review soon. I bought an Alfa Romeo yesterday, God help me. Sight unseen. We'll see how that works out for me. But we'll try to have that soon, and otherwise some other fun stuff. Thank you for having a look. We really appreciate it. We'll have something coming up soon, and take care until then. Bye-bye.